What's up, family ministry team? My name is Ryan, and today we're going to be talking about my book review. I decided to do it in a video form because I thought it would be a lot easier, and I think I express my passion and my views of the book a lot more through a video. And so, honestly, I just want to get right into it. I want to talk about the key takeaways that I got from the book. I thought it was extremely practical, but also very scripture-filled, and I feel like it can be hard to balance both because like sometimes you're looking for scripture that like kind of matches what you're talking about. But I mean, I think the key example of this whole book was, Jesus and the Good Shepherd, which we'll talk about later when I talk about the other book that we had. But starting off, the spiritual battle for church safety. And so in the beginning, in the introduction, it talked about 1 Peter 5:8-9, where it says, "Stay alert, watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Stand firm against him, be strong in your faith, and remember that your family of believers all over the world is going through the same kind of troubles and suffering that you are." And I thought this was honestly a good way to start off because, we wouldn't need to have a safe church if the enemy wasn't real. And I think that's so true. And I remember talking about reading the book, and you're talking about Revelation and the spiritual battle that is constantly going on. And I think this is what Peter is reminding us in this, is to stay alert because the spiritual realm is like real and the heavenly realm is real. And we do have angels and there's a war going on, but we're still affected by that war. And the enemy is prowling around like a roaring lion to devour maybe that child, maybe that family, maybe that staff member that we'll talk about later. And so I think that was a very good way to just open up the book. And then I think my favorite chapters by far were definitely chapter 3, which talked about abuse, different kinds of abuse and systemic abuse and how to respond to it. But then also chapter 7, and this talked about navigating moral failures in an individual, or as an individual, but also as a church, how to navigate that. And I think that was honestly just huge because I think that's one of the things that like can be very scary and a very heavy subject, but the author just addressed it in a very good way. And so a quote from chapter 3 was, "The roots of abuse are found in the soil of a sinful desire for power and influence. Abuse happens because power prevails." And I think that's so huge, that it's small seeds. Like it says, the roots, it starts with a seed. So it's like maybe I get this one little opportunity, maybe I get this happens, and like it grows and roots are formed. And then that's when people want power, they want influence, and they receive that, and they take advantage of it. And then another takeaway that was practical was how to recognize abuse. I believe it gave many examples. Like one was entitlement, one was superiority, duplicity, justification, manipulation, and then I think all of these are just forms of pride in a sense. And so I think that was huge just to be able to, like, for the author to break it down, like, practically what abuse could be noticed as. And so that was huge. And then chapter 7, by far my favorite chapter, and it helped me the most because I think it gave me practical steps on how to address moral failures, but then also how to handle them, and then how to like lead a church through that. Because that's something I never thought about. I've never been in the center of a church moral failing where the church splits, people are upset, people are their trust is broken. I've never been in the middle of that, and so this kind of like putting me in different scenarios, different situations. And then there's different types of moral failings. I didn't know that either. I just know there's like the major ones where someone commits adultery or someone gets a felony, etc. But I didn't know that there was actually 5 levels. And so I thought it was really cool. The first level that it talked about was when the failure only affects the person involved. In the book said that this doesn't happen very often because most of the time it affects at least someone. But I'm sure this one could be described as like maybe a pornography addiction, or not obesity, but like overindulging in food. Like this is it could affect others obviously, but it's mainly affecting you. But then level 2, that failure affects a few people and has a little impact. And so this could be, I think the example they used was like a student pastor using this church credit card, and it could impact a few people like himself and then maybe the leaders, but it has a little impact because it's not going to overall affect the whole entire church. And then level 3 was the failure has potential for a lasting impact. And then level 4 was failure has lasting impact and does a lot of hurt for a lot of people. And so this could be the church is struggling financially, but the lead pastor doesn't want to address it, doesn't want to tell the church. And so because of that selfishness and because of that desire for, to look perfect, it could affect the whole church and cause a lasting effect, because the church could be struggling and all he has to do is ask for help and people would help, but he doesn't want to do that. And then level 5, I think, is the one that we all know, that failure has a permanent impact on the entire church. And this could be someone committing adultery, someone abusing a child, someone having fraudulent charges on the card and not managing the finances well of a church. And I think the book says it perfectly at the end of level 5. It says, the book says, pastors don't fall into extreme moral failures overnight. And then it goes into talking about how it's like the small things over time. It's like, okay, is this okay? I'll give into it once. And it's like the small little footholds that you give the enemy, when it says in the Bible that we are not to give the enemy a foothold, even if it's the smallest one, because he will take advantage of that. And so I just think this book is so intentional, because it gives a path to offer moral failings to, or like for what their next step is. That's really the word I was looking for. Like the first one is, what is the degree of the offense? Is it murder? Is it they stole a few dollars? Is it they've been stealing food from the church? Like, what is the degree of the offense? And then is that staff member accepting or denying responsibility? Is the person thinking, oh no, I didn't steal any food, I didn't do this, I didn't do that? Or are they like, yeah, I stole the food, I want to be honest, my family's struggling with this or that, and so we did steal the food. And then level 3, or the next level, was what is the level of remorse? Are they sad about it? Are they they have a repentful heart, or are they just like, it didn't matter? Like, what are you talking about? And then what are the church policies and covenants? I think this is a huge thing, because if your church has a strict policy on moral failings and like what you believe as a church, so if they're strict on that, then they have to be strict when it comes to the next the consequence of the action. And then I think the author finished off the chapter by how to lead the church into healing. And I think it was just a beautiful example that the author shared, talking about like you have to address it. You can't just like kind of push it to the side and like keep going through the message. Like stop the message series you're going through, address it, so because there's no healing when you don't address it. And then what I loved about this book is that in the beginning, it was able to very like lure me in by stories and like practical tools, but also offering scripture as well. And then in the very beginning of the introduction, it talked about like a good shepherd. And then this book also, I love how it like kind of tied in with the other book that we had, which was Psalm 23, and how we are under a good shepherd, and how Jesus is willing to defend his flock, no matter what the circumstance is. And then the good shepherd, it just gave like examples, like it sleeps beside the sheep, and it's constantly taking care of them, it's constantly feeding them. And I think a huge thing that I kind of read today was, you anoint my head with oil. I think that was such a beautiful chapter, because I didn't realize how like flies, in a sense, could affect sheep. The flies could cause the sheep to go insane, because they're like messing with their eyes, messing like with cuts and stuff. And so the role of the oil was to prevent the flies from getting on them and causing the sheep to go insane. And so I think in the same way, like Jesus has ministry leaders to prevent the flies, prevent the things that cause the church to go insane, and for moral failings to happen. And so in a sense, like we get to be kind of sheep and shepherds to other people, but we're shepherds under the great shepherd. And I think that's what I got. Overall, I think this was an amazing book to read. I would definitely recommend it for the next class and for the future classes to come. But thank you guys so much.